It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, September 13th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking New York Rangers and the rookie series today.
Yeah, I always like this time of year.
Yeah, we've got Jon Chik from Locked On Rangers joining us. Plus, we'll talk about the rookie camp roster and the Matvey Michkov loan, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. As a show, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Locked On Flyers. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A little bit of news before we get into our crossover with Locked On New York Rangers. Brian Boucher is going to join the Flyers broadcast as an analyst, taking over for Keith Jones on the local broadcast. We did know already that he was taken over on the national broadcast side of things, but good to see that we'll have Bouch in the booth this season. I love his analysis so much, and he brings so much to a broadcast. So I'm glad we've got him here too.
Yeah, Brian's a good guy, really knowledgeable. I like the goaltender point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in the meantime, as we're going to talk about with Jon, rookie camp is just around the corner, kicking off on Thursday, and we got the official schedule and roster from the Flyers. So the first on ice session will be on Thursday at 11:30 a.m. in Voorhees. Then we've got a couple of days on ice. Then we've got the 2 rookie games against the Rangers, and then 3 more days of rookie camp before training camp starts on the other side of that next week. Looking at the roster itself, I think that you always look to see about who was in development camp as an invitee that also now gets invited to rookie camp as well. And we had 4 of those guys, 3 forwards and a defenseman. Jacob Goucher was a Reading player who was invited back. And Brendan Furry, who I think stood out a little bit at development camp, right?
Yep.
And then Jonathan Falchon on the forward side. And then Sam Sedley, who was from Owen in the OHL on the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, always good to have a fuller camp. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I do think, I remember all 4 of those guys specifically from watching development camp. So it's good to see them get another shot with the Flyers organization.
Mm-hmm.
Heading into this upcoming season. And, as far as the main roster at rookie camp for the Flyers, I think, you always look for who is maybe on the older side that you're surprised to see there, but there's always 1 or 2 of those guys that kind of act as leaders and kind of set an example for the other guys. And I think, Tyson Forster is that guy in this camp to a large degree, right?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, he's pretty level-headed. He had the NHL/AHL experience, playoff experience in the AHL. So, no, he's definitely that guy.
Yeah, I think so as well. And, other than that, you like to see, everybody get a fair shake at rookie camp. I think one of the other guys will be interesting to see is Will Zamolek, who was a free agent signing. Where does he fit into all this on the blue line side of things? And, we anticipate that he'll be on the Phantoms, but what kind of role is he going to play?
I don't know. He was largely forgotten about last year. So I don't have a good feel. I mean, he's got some ability, but I have no idea where he fits in.
Yeah, and he's definitely on the older side as well.
Yes.
And then, as far as other leaders, Adam Ginning, I think, will be one of those guys
Yes.
on the blue line side of things, given his experience with the Phantoms. And very much looking forward to seeing Ethan Sampson and what he can do.
Yeah, Samson's fun to watch. I definitely am looking forward to seeing him again.
Anyone else that you're looking forward to just seeing if they stand out at this rookie camp?
You know me, I'm going to look at everybody. So I can't just pick out one or two. I'm going to be looking at a lot of different guys for a lot of different things. So I can't pick them out.
All right. Well, we'll force you to choose at some point, Russ.
I know.
But also on the forward side, Elliot Denoye, I think will obviously have a lot of eyes on him in terms of what he's looking like heading into this season. Bobby Brink, who we're going to talk about a little bit with our friends at Locked On New York Rangers. I think that as far as the guys that may not stick around, Denver Barkey is one who was just drafted. But again, just want to see how he matches up against everyone else at camp.
We just want to see him. He was mostly hurt in every way, shape, or form when we had a chance to see him. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And then the other kind of question mark, Samu Tuamala is back at rookie camp, and where is he going to fit in, and what is his role going to be in terms of is he going to end up coming to North America at all?
He's supposed to be here, so I'm assuming he's going to be here. He has to have a great camp, and he should be one of the top 3 scorers for the Flyers. If he's not, then we're going to start to question, like, what's his future looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. One more bit of news, and that is about Matvey Michkov. And there had been rumblings about him potentially being on loan simply because he hadn't gotten played yet in the first several games in the KHL. Now it is official that he is on loan to Sochi, and so hopefully he can get some playing time there. But is there a disadvantage to him playing on that team competition-wise?
Well, I've been told Sochi's a little better this year than last year, but yeah, I mean, he's not on a super team now. Like there is a difference there. Yes, he'll get the playing time. I know I am not choosing sides when I know a lot of fans were just like, oh, this is better that this happened because now he'll play. Yeah, okay, but he's going to have some good players with him. The thing is this: there's going to be a moment, and more than a few moments, when he does come to North America, and then he has to conform to North American hockey. So if he goes to Sochi and he could be the man and he does all these great things, that's fine. But at some point, he is going to have to play more defense, be like a little bit better of a teammate. So, or at least, because, that stuff keeps popping up and you can't ignore it all where, the coach is calling him like snobby or whatever. So, and look, I was that way when I was his age. I was brash. I came out of New York. There were times I had an attitude in the work world when I was trying to work my way up. So those kinds of things are natural for a young player. And we just have to deal with that by watching it and just letting it go. And that's all part of before he gets here is letting some of that stuff go. But if he gets here and John Tortorella is his coach, don't think it's going to be just like this smooth transition, because it probably won't be.
Yeah, I think it is going to be interesting to watch. But again, as we've said, slow and steady wins the race. Let's look at, a large volume of information, more data, the better around his play. And so, let's see how he does, right?
Yeah, exactly. I want to see, I'm not just looking for points. Everybody's looking for video clips to be wowed. I'm looking deeper than that. I'm just letting everybody know when I'm watching video, I'm looking for more than that, because I'm looking for what's going to really keep transferring. He's obviously got offense that's going to transfer, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we do have those rookie series games against the New York Rangers kids this weekend. We're going to talk about it with Jon Chik of Locked On New York Rangers coming up next.
Football season's here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you get bonus bets for every victory. You could use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Take some time to visit FanDuel and include money lines, props, etc. around your team.
It's time for another Metro Division preview crossover episode. Today we've got the New York Rangers, and from Locked On New York Rangers, Jon Chik. Welcome, Jon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rachel. I believe we did one of these in the past. It might have been an in-season crossover, if I'm remembering correctly, but this is always a lot of fun. And Russ, nice to talk to you here today as well. And looking forward, we got, in one form or another, we got Ranger Flyer hockey on Friday and Saturday. So definitely looking forward to that as well.
Absolutely. We thought this week would be the best week to do this crossover since our kids are playing each other this weekend. Just to start off, Jon, looking at the Rangers at the end of this past season, like what was the general sentiment around the team and kind of what was the goals that were set for this offseason?
Yeah, it was basically the polar opposite of the season before, because 2 years ago, obviously a lot of people, most people I would say, didn't even have the Rangers making the playoffs. And even the people that did thought like, well, maybe they'll squeak in, but they'll probably get knocked out in the first round. And, they have that really dramatic series win against Pittsburgh, coming back from 3-1 down, going all the way to the Eastern Conference final, just 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final. And everybody's all excited going into this past season. And, of course, the Rangers make a lot of moves at the deadline, not the least of which was Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. Really felt like they were a team that could do a lot of damage, make a deep run, and potentially even win the whole thing. And the playoffs couldn't have started any better. You go into New Jersey and you crush them twice, 5-1 in both of those games. And after that, long story short, it basically just fell apart, and people were not happy. A lot of star players on the Rangers just did not play well, did not get the job done. A lot of, the Ranger fan, anger has kind of been aimed at Artemi Panarin because he had a really rough series. Patrick Kane really divided the fan base right from the second that he got here. But overall, they just didn't get the job done. I think the Devils were a little bit hungrier in that series. But I also think in a lot of ways, your season ends in disappointing fashion like that. It just makes you look forward to the next one that much more. And, I think I can speak for all three of us when I say that I cannot wait for this rookie series and then ultimately the start of the NHL season as well.
Yeah, I agree, Jon. I was at that game 7. I covered that one in New Jersey. And so that was an interesting dynamic. And everything you said was right. As far as this rookie series, what's nice about it is even though there's 2 organizations going in different directions, the Flyers could sort of look at this and know that the Rangers were in their shoes like 2-3 years ago when they, had made the massive rebuild and sent out the letter and all that. I look at it and, the first guy I'm going to talk about is Brennan Othmann, because I know there's so many Ranger fans that want him to play this year. And I just saw him up close at the rookie photo shoot, and he's not physically there yet. Like, I just want to caution people, if you want him to play his game the way he is going to play his game for his entire career, then you want him to play in the AHL this year and build himself up and not have to worry about the NHL at the age of 20. I just don't think that's the right move. I don't think they're going to make that move, but I know a lot of fans are interested in that. What's your take on that?
I have a fairly similar take. In the OHL, it's not just the points and the scoring and everything. He is a very physical player, and somebody that's kind of a wrecking ball out there. But man, you go from the OHL straight to the NHL. That's a hop, skip, and a leap forward, and it is a whole different monster. And to your point, Russ, I think he's best served probably starting this season with the Wolfpack in the AHL. Get some seasoning there. You don't have to force it. You have a really good roster. You have a roster that should be playoffs this season, and Othmann can come along at his own pace. If he goes to the AHL, completely lights it up, looks like he's ready, then maybe that's a conversation we start to have, midway through the season or whatever it might be. But yeah, I'm all for him getting a little bit more seasoning in the AHL and just building his confidence, building himself up. And to your point, again, just 20 years old. We've seen players do it. We've seen teenagers in the NHL, but again, there's just no real reason to force it right now. And I'm looking forward to watching him, continue his development, hopefully in the AHL. And then, like I said, if he lights it up, then we can have that conversation a little bit later in the season.
Yeah, something that's interesting that connects him to the Flyers is that his Peterborough teammate J.R. Avon is one of the more interesting Flyers rookie prospects that we're going to see this weekend. He was an undrafted free agent signing to the Flyers after he had gotten a camp invite, and so these two guys will potentially get a chance to play against each other after just having this great run in the OHL and the Memorial Cup this past year.
Yeah, it's interesting how that can happen. I had a similar question for the two of you because a couple of years ago in the World Juniors, we saw Team USA, win the whole thing, and I think it was the third line or maybe the second line, but I think it was the third line for Team USA. A couple of prospects, one for the Rangers, one for the Flyers. You had Brett Berard from the Rangers, former 5th-round pick, and Bobby Brink for the Flyers. I want to say a former 2nd-round pick, and actually made his debut with the Flyers this past season. And they really clicked during the World Juniors. But the thought that I had watching it is, it's all good now, but these two are going to be at each other's throats in a few years if they're on the Rangers and Flyers. But your thoughts on Brink? Obviously, a high draft pick and got a little taste of NHL action last season. Just your thoughts on his development and what kind of role he could play for the team this year.
He's a real interesting case right now because we are very enthusiastic about Bobby Brink and his potential, but he, I think, is somebody that has need a little bit more cooking. He had an injury that he was coming back from this past season, and so we really only got like a half season of AHL time from him. And I think that he's just one of those guys that's going to have to start out in the AHL again. But will have high potential for that call up as long as he can keep the momentum going that he built up toward the end of last season.
What I'd add to is like the way Brink and Berard play are complete opposites, and that's why they're good line mates because, Brink is a guy that needs the puck and, he can dish it, but he's a guy that generally needs the puck and he needs to, get high quality scoring chances. Now, sometimes he does them in really tough ways, like he just doesn't care about his body, and he's gone through a lot of injuries. Berard's like that too, so that's why they're kind of like that way. I think this year is the biggest year for Brink because I don't want to say it's on the brink for him, but I think with the Flyers it could be. I think he really needs to show that if he's not an NHLer, he is that next guy up, like Rachel said, and he needs to stay healthy and he needs to put points up. These things weren't necessarily around last year, and so you saw flashes. He's got to do it more full time now because I think otherwise he might fall victim to just falling further down the depth chart. Right now he's pretty high, but and the other thing is to the people that put out the prospect rankings, since Rachel did talk about J.R. Avon, he's in my top 10. I don't care if he's not in your top 10, but I think people need to watch a little more J.R. Avon just in general.
Mm-hmm. We are big fans of his on this show. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny how with the prospects, everybody's kind of got, their sleeper guy or somebody that they just really like. And actually, while we're talking about Berard, he's kind of become that for me. It just feels like for somebody that the Rangers took in the 5th round, like I always end up circling back to him one way or another. He's having a big season at Providence or he's killing it in the World Juniors, or there was actually a charity hockey game in Stamford, Connecticut a little bit earlier this summer. Really, really nice thing, the Shoulder Check Showcase, and he participated in that along with a bunch of players from the Rangers, Kreider, Fox, Mika, they were all there. Barclay Goodrow was there. Even Trevor Zegras was there. So that was a cool thing. But yeah, he pops up every so often, and not the biggest guy out there, but, a feisty player. I don't know that he'll ever be a superstar in the NHL, but it is fun to sometimes root for, these underdog players and, just some of your personal favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Gabe Perreault is not going to be at camp because he's off to college, but in terms of his development path, like what is that looking like? And when do you anticipate seeing him with the Rangers organization?
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure. I want to say I'm pretty sure he was asked about this, and he talked about maybe 2 college years, if I'm remembering this correctly. It's possible I have it mixed up with a different process.
No, I think that's what he said at the draft.
I think that's what he said, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Look, if he goes to college and he dominates and he feels he's ready and he wants to move everything along, then that's awesome. I'm happy that the Rangers finally decide to take a right winger in the 1st round. I know in hockey and even in other sports too, they'll say sometimes oh, just take the best player. Don't worry about like positional need, especially like in a sport like hockey where we don't see these guys for a couple of years. But the Rangers, to me, right wing is where they've been the thinnest for quite a few seasons now. And, a lot of people had Perreault going maybe top 10 in this year's draft. He was a little bit polarizing, but man, when he kept sliding and sliding and sliding and he's still there for the Rangers at 23, I'm thinking like, man, I think they got to pounce here. I know that some of the concern might be that he's not the biggest guy out there, but the talent is off the charts. And you look at, different beat writers doing their top 10 Ranger prospects and lists like that. He's already like at or near the top of all these lists. And I'm very excited that they were able to get their hands on them. And luck was just kind of on their side the night of the draft that he fell as far as he did.
Yeah, what I could add about Perreault, because I'd seen him a lot live last year, was he's got all these offensive gifts that you want: hands, IQ, passing, shooting. His skating's not great, but he does need to put on a lot of leg muscle. And so if you look at his legs, they're really thin. If he could build that up, that might help his stride and that might give him more explosion. So that's why he knows he needs at least another year in college and then another summer to really kind of see where he's at that way. To me, it's all about him building himself up physically. The other stuff's there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. It's a shame he's not going to be able to participate at this prospect camp, but there will be more down the line at some point. And, while we're talking about all these highly touted prospects, there's another guy for the Flyers. Got to ask you guys about. He actually scored an overtime winner during one of these two games last season. For anybody that needs a refresher, Flyers won both of these last year. They won 2-1 in overtime and then also 5-1. But the first one, Tyson Forster scores in the overtime period. Another young player who got a taste of action with the Flyers this past year. I want to say it was 7 points in 8 games, somewhere in that ballpark. So small sample size, but obviously passed with flying colors last year. And do you expect him to be there at the start of this NHL season with the Flyers? And what are your expectations from him?
Oh, yeah. I think, if you look at all the Flyers prospects, he is the one, and we did a listener poll about it as well, got the highest percentage of most likely to make the team this upcoming season. I think of all of them, he's the most ready to do so and make that jump. He really showed at the end of this past season that he could fit in. I think he's working well with John Tortorella for the most part. And so I think that's also a benefit right now. And he just kind of brings a quality where he's kind of does what he's told, serves the role that he's asked to play. And in a Tortorella system, that's what you got to do.
Yeah. What I could add is I did speak to Tyson at the rookie showcase. We did put up some of that video on the Locked On Flyers YouTube page or Instagram. I can't remember which one it was on. Maybe both. Who knows? But he did talk about Tortorella, and there is a mutual respect there because John sees that like he's a developing player with a big body with a great shot, and John likes his shot. So because he likes that shot and he sees that nobody else on the team may be able to score like that in the future, he's going to give him a lot more benefit of the doubt that he would other players. So, Tyson's going to be there. He's going to be there in preseason. He's going to play all the preseason games. And then I think they'll start to decide where his game is at and maybe even give him a few more at the beginning of the year. The one thing that Tyson said to me that was really smart was that he talked about the Phantoms run, and he did talk about how that really helped him. And that, I think, is bigger than the 8 games he played in the NHL last year because he got to play in the playoffs, got to feel like a winner. And let's face it, there's a lot of Flyers that don't know that feeling right now. And so that's a big thing for him to kind of carry up with him.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, it's kind of an interesting situation with these two teams right now because we've got a former Ranger coach coaching the Flyers and a former Flyer coach now coaching the Rangers. And it's funny. I don't know if you guys remember the Road to the Winter Classic show. I don't even know if they still do that. But yeah, great show. Behind the scenes stuff is awesome. But that was the case at the time. Tortorella was coaching the Rangers and Laviolette was coaching the Flyers.
We've got more Flyers Rangers talk coming up next.
All right. So, yeah, Peter Laviolette, what can you tell us about him? Obviously, a little bit of an up and down tenure with the Philadelphia Flyers. Goes to the Stanley Cup final the first year there as a 7 seed. And, was in the playoffs the next couple of years after that. And then it kind of fell apart the last couple of years. But, what do you remember, first of all, from Peter Laviolette taking that team to the finals? And what do you think his strengths are as a head coach?
I think he's fiery is a word I would use to describe him. He's very intense as well. And I think you saw that in his time with the Capitals, that he's just kind of a guy that has such tunnel vision as to what he wants to accomplish. And I also think that he's really good at using the right players at the right time. I feel like he really knows how to get the right matchups, and make sure that the team is in the best position to succeed. But I think, as is the case with many coaches, there's just a burnout point that you have with every team that you coach there, where you just can't do anymore. And he had reached that time in Washington, but I feel like he's coming into New York at a similar kind of juncture as he did when he got to Washington. I think less so than with the Flyers, who were in a much more of a tumult situation when he took over, than just coming into Washington as a team on the rise with a superstar.
Yeah, what I could say is, and I'll give a quick cheap plug. People could buy my Winter Classic book at Amazon.com. But I've covered both those coaches a lot because I covered all the Winter Classics and also in season. And what Laviolette will do for the Rangers is he'll unlock Panarin. He'll let Panarin basically do whatever he wants so he can get him back on track. And he'll try and push those rookies with open ice play and see what he can get out of them offensive wise. Now, maybe not Kakko, because he's really good defensively. So I don't know if there's as much offense to open up there because he's so good defensively. And so he may get a little less offensive chance than someone like Lafreniere, but he's fiery. Everybody remembers him throwing the jelly jar against the wall with the Flyers. So he's going to have these moments. He's unafraid. Like, I remember him telling Ilya Brizgalov that he wasn't going to be the Winter Classic starter, and Brizgalov stormed out of the area that we didn't get to see how they were talking, but we got to see Brizgalov right after, and he wouldn't speak to the media. He was really ticked off, and that probably started a chasm with Brizgalov and his Flyers career. But Laviolette didn't care. Bob was his guy, and that was his guy. So he's that way, and I think in a way that's good for New York because the area is not going to be too big for him.
That makes sense. And, something that you both kind of touched on this a little bit, but Laviolette and his track record with young players, there's kind of been some mixed reviews of that. And I've done a couple of crossovers with, we talked to Locked On Predators and we talked to Locked On Caps about, his tenures with those teams. But obviously he's been to the finals 3 different times with 3 different teams. And a lot of those rosters, you go back and look at it, there's some young players in those rosters, guys that, in many cases went on to have great careers, and in some cases are still having great careers. So, and you mentioned, Lafreniere and Kakko, but is this a good coach for, a Ranger team that still has a lot of young players and a lot of guys that are still trying to find their way in the NHL a little bit?
And we're going to find out. That's a great question. We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Don't really know.
Yeah, I think also he's a lot different now than he was back then. And so maybe then he would have been more balanced with the vets versus the young players. He's a little bit more set in his ways right now. And so that dynamic could be a lot different now than when it was when he took over the Flyers. I think the same can be said for John Tortorella. I think there's the same fieriness, but a kind of different method to the madness.
Yeah, well, with Torts, and you guys are well aware of this. You watch hockey and you just went through year 1 of John Tortorella with the Flyers. But, he's not somebody that's very subtle or you're going to wonder what he's thinking or, what the deal is. Obviously, he's going to always speak his mind out there. And for better or worse, he's always going to be himself and he's going to do things his way.
Looking at the Rangers side of things, what are the expectations for Laviolette and for this team this year?
Yeah, I think the expectations haven't really changed. The fact that they made it to the Eastern Conference Final 2 years ago when everybody thought they were still kind of rebuilding, that really elevated the bar and really raised the expectations, I think, from the players and, the front office and the fans alike. And I don't think it's going to be any different this year. I think, people really expect the Rangers to be a team that's going to be one of the last couple of team standings and make a serious run at this thing. We will see. Obviously, they couldn't afford to bring back Tarasenko and Kane. I guess you never know with Kane. He's still out there, and that's going to be an ongoing storyline to track, even after the season starts here. But they don't really have any salary cap space, so it's hard to see that happening. But, with the little amount of cap space that they had this offseason, I thought they did a pretty nice job pulling in Blake Wheeler. I mean, yes, he's older now and not the player that he once was, but when you get Blake Wheeler, who just had 55 points for a so-so Jets team, when you get him for just 25K over the minimum, I think you got to do it, especially, again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier, Rangers being thin at right wing. So I thought that was a nice pickup. Jonathan Quick, I mean, obviously he's on the back nine here to put it mildly, but I'm hoping that, being in a backup role, less wear and tear, less, expectations from him. I think he can do a decent job as the backup goalie. And just to name one more real quick, bring in Nick Bonino, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, and just kind of a hard-nosed, grinded-out kind of player. I think the Rangers could use a few more players like that, can kill some penalties, center the fourth line. So overall, I think they did a pretty nice job. And in addition to everything that I just said, the main core is back. A couple of guys left in free agency. Would have been nice to have Tyler Mott back. He goes to Tampa. But overall, the main players are still there. So you've got that going for you. And then you also hope, you keep your fingers crossed, that this is the year that Lafreniere and Kakko, specifically, a couple other young guys as well, take that next step forward and really become the players that people are hoping and expecting that they'll be. So expectations definitely still very high for this team.
Yeah, I mean, I just interviewed Will Culley at the rookie showcase, and even though he may not be playing in this game, he said the expectations are still the Stanley Cup. Like, he flat out said it, and he knows it, and his spot's in jeopardy, and I think it's in jeopardy because of Bonino, and I don't know if Bonino has it anymore. You could have, if it were me, and again, I'm the best coach in the league because I do it from here, you could have put Goudreau at center, and you could have put Culley in there, and then you could have probably kept Tyler Mott as well. I think Ranger fans still would have been happy with that. Now I think Culley almost has to start the year in Hartford, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but I think he's really close to actually helping the team, and so that's the thing that kind of makes it hard for them. But yeah, Culley's a guy to watch. I think he made a big step over this last year.
Yeah, I like him as well, physical player and has some offensive skill to go along with it. And got a little cup of coffee with the Rangers this past season, ended up playing in 4 games with them, got into a couple of fights, showed that he's going to be a physical player. And we'll see, obviously the fourth line right now, I would think Goudreau is probably going to start on the third line, and the fourth line, you're looking at VZ, Bonino, and Pitlick. Maybe at some point, he squeezes somebody like Pitlick out of the lineup. Former Flyer there, former everything is Tyler Pitlick.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
He's played for just about every
He's a
team.
great guy to know about for Puck Doku.
Yeah, you know what? While we're yes, he is. He definitely is. So I did notice Rangers and Flyers, their first matchup is actually the day after Thanksgiving. So I don't know how you guys are gonna be feeling that day or how I'm gonna be feeling, but I mean, if you guys are up for another crossover, I'm probably game if you guys are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I love the tradition of the Flyers Rangers post Thanksgiving afternoon game.
Always fun. Yeah.
Always a good time for sure.
Amen. Yes.
All right. Once again, thanks to Jon Chik from Locked On New York Rangers. It's always fun getting to talk to our fellow Metro Division hosts around the network.
Yep, always fun. We always trade information. It's always good for everybody, good for us, good for the listeners.
Absolutely. Just a reminder, there's still time to vote in our summer poll on the first Flyers goal in the rookie series this weekend. There's a link to that poll in the show notes. Also, we are going to be back to 5 shows a week starting next week. So we'll have our Friday show where we'll preview the 2 rookie series games in more detail. Then next week, 5 shows a week, back to the daily grind. Hockey is back. Gotta love it.
Yep. Great time of the year.
As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. We'll have our mailbag on Friday as well. So send in your questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.